Bonjour tout le monde. Hi everyone. Mon nom est David Coulombe des Instituts de recherche en santé du Canada. I am in charge of media relations, but today I will be your host, your moderator for this important announcement. Alors, nous sommes très fiers de l'annonce que nous allons faire ce matin, une annonce importante qui touche les gens qui sont atteints du diabète de type 1. So welcome to the CIHR JDRF Canada funding announcement, accelerating stem cell-based therapies for type 1 diabetes. So right off the bat, I just wanted to explain that for the media, there's going to be some people that will be pronouncing some speeches, some remarks, and the question period will be after that. I invite you to write down your question in the Q&A section, and we will respond to those questions. I just want to start by introducing our speakers today. First, Sonia Saidu, Member of Parliament for Brampton South. Good morning, Sonia.
Good morning. Thank you. Good morning, bonjour, everyone. I'm Sonia Saidu, the MP from Brampton South. I'm pleased to speak to you on behalf of the Honorable Patty Saidu, our Minister of Health, and as the chair of Parliamentary All-Party Diabetes Caucus. Before politics, I worked in healthcare for 18 years and saw firsthand the issue diabetic Canadians face every day. I have continued to work with those issues since being elected, including unanimously passing the motion to designate November as Diabetes Awareness Month, and in February, when I tabled my private members' motion C-237 to establish a national framework for diabetes, which we debated just yesterday in the House of Commons. Since being elected, I have hundreds of meetings with researchers, patient groups, and stakeholders across the country and representing Canada around the world. It has been an honor of mine to work with JDRF both locally and nationally. With so much focus on COVID-19 these days, it is important for us to remember that there remain many other health conditions that require our attention and support. Among these is type 1 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease that damages the pancreatic cells that produce insulin in our bodies. Unfortunately, isolating the cause and finding the cure for this disease remains an ongoing health research challenge. People living with type 1 diabetes must administer insulin several times each day to keep their blood glucose level normal. Even with the intervention, these individuals often experience serious and even life threatening complications. The Government of Canada is committed to supporting type 1 diabetes research. And I'm so pleased to announce today that the Canadian Institutes of Health Research has teamed up with JDRF Canada to support two Canadian research teams that are working to develop new treatment for type 1 diabetes in an effort to improve the quality of life of people living with this condition. Supported by a combined investment of $6 million, these two research teams will focus on stem cell based therapies, which have the potential to become a revolutionary new way to treat people with type 1 diabetes. If successful, these advances could potentially allow individuals living with type 1 diabetes to lead healthy lives without daily insulin injections. I would like to express my sincere thanks and gratitude to these two remarkable research teams, which are led by Dr. Maria Cristina Nostro from the University of Toronto and the McEwen Stem Cell Institute of the University Health Network, and by Dr. Francis Lin of the University of British Columbia and the BC Children's Hospital Research Institute. These teams are comprised of many of Canada's best and brightest scientists in the areas of stem cell biology, vascular biology, islet transplantation, genome editing, and immunology. These researchers have dedicated their professional lives to finding solutions to health challenges, and I know that they are very excited to pursue this very promising avenue of scientific investigation. The $6 million investment in part of a larger research initiative entitled 100 Years of Insulin, Accelerating Canadian Discovery to Defeat Diabetes, which is supported by CIHR and its partners. As the name suggests, the initiative commemorates the 100th anniversary of the insulin discovery of insulin, a Canadian discovery that changed the lives of millions of people around the world. On behalf of Minister Saidu, I would like to thank our partners at JDRF Canada for their contribution for this great initiative, extend congratulations to the two successful research teams and offer you our best wishes for success. Canadian and people throughout the world living with type 1 diabetes will be anxiously waiting the result of your work, and we look forward to following your progress in the years ahead. Thank you from bottom of our heart. Thank you so much.
Thank you for those remarks, Madam Saidu. And before we move on, I just want to point out that and introduce the other speakers that we'll be hearing from this morning. So Marie-France Lanon, Députée d'Orléans. We will hear also from Dr. Norman Rosenblum, who is the Scientific Director for CIHR Institute of Nutrition, Metabolism and Diabetes, INMD. Also Dave Prouten, who is President and CEO of JDRF Canada. We will also have Dr. Christina Nostro, Senior Scientist at the McEwen Stem Cell Institute at University Health Network and Associate Professor, Department of Physiology at the University of Toronto. And finally, Dr. Francis Lin, Associate Professor in the Department of Surgery and School of Biomedical Engineering at the University of British Columbia and investigator at the BC Children's Hospital Research Institute. Also, before we move on, I would like to acknowledge that we are hosting this event this beautiful Saturday morning on traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. So, that being said, thanks again, Madam Saidu, for your remarks. I would like now to introduce a short video. Voici Madame Marie-France Lalonde, députée d'Orléans.
Over the course of the last few months, I have been proud to work as co-chair of the All-Party Juvenile Diabetes Caucus. Through this work, my colleagues and I fully support and recommend the partnership to defeat diabetes between the CIHR and JDRF Canada. À ce sujet, ce partenariat a donné cours à de nombreuses découvertes exceptionnelles au cours des dernières années qui améliorent la vie de ceux qui vivent avec le diabète de type 1. C'est donc un bon moment pour accroître nos efforts. We have witnessed incredible new development these past few decades recently around stem cell-based treatments. We need to keep the momentum of Canadian type 1 diabetes research going and invest in the future for those impacted by the condition. Congratulations to the recipients. Félicitations aux récipiendaires.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la députée. Now I would like to turn over to Dave Prouten. Dave is the President and CEO of JDRF Canada. Dave?
Thank you, David, and merci et bonjour à tous. Imagine a day when those living with type 1 diabetes may not need insulin injections or to wear a pump or a glucose monitor. And today, as we approach the end of National Diabetes Awareness Month and are on the eve of the 100th anniversary of the discovery of insulin in Toronto, we're one step closer to making that a reality. And I'm so thrilled to be here with you today, as this announcement really marks an important milestone in diabetes research and offers a potentially different future for those living with type 1 in Canada and around the world. I just want to also say we're very proud of our partnership with CIHR. I want to thank Dr. Norm Rosenblum and the entire CIHR team. I think together we're making a real impact, and I'm grateful for that. You know, this partnership is allowing us to build upon Canada's global leadership legacy in the field of type 1 diabetes research. It's a partnership that is aligned with and supports the mission of JDRF to improve lives and find cures. And it's a partnership founded on collaboration, because we work very closely with CIHR to design programs that will make a real difference for people and leverage the expertise of our amazing Canadian research community. We believe it's a critical time to be investing in stem cell-based therapies because they've shown such great promise as a new source of insulin-producing cells and a potential pathway to a cure. And JDRF is an organization created by families for families. We rely on the generosity of donors to support and accelerate our research. So I want to thank all of our donors because they know that a path to a cure begins and ends with research. I'm going to do a special shout out and thank you to a few key supporters of this initiative. I want to thank Tom Glardy and his family, the Menkes family, the R. Howard Webster Foundation and Bevan Ann Columbin, and Hugh and Laurie Pearson. And I also want to thank and congratulate our grant recipients, Drs. Nostro and Lin. I've got to know you over the years. You're remarkable, and I certainly wish you tremendous success. You've each assembled a great team of multidisciplinary leaders across the country. And this was all designed to encourage collaboration so we could move faster. So, we're counting on speed here and great success, and we're excited about that. So I just couldn't be prouder of the success that we're making together, and thank you. But it's a real honor now. I'm just going to have the pleasure of introducing a family to you. Hugh and Laurie Pearson are going to say a few words. They're longtime supporters of JDRF because their daughter was diagnosed when she was 7. And they're supporting this CIHR partnership and specifically the stem cell research grants. And they helped us kick this off because in 2018, they supported a workshop that brought together Canada's leading investigators to explore and discuss collaborative research opportunities. This was the first step in this initiative. So I want to thank them and all of our other supporters to have the foresight and trust in JDRF, but together, we're moving forward some very important initiatives. So now I'm going to turn it over to Laurie and Hugh to say a few words. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Hugh Pearson.
And I'm Laurie Pearson. Our daughter Jenny was diagnosed with type 1 over 15 years ago at the age of 7. I'll never forget when we arrived home following her post-diagnosis hospital stay and she asked, "Mommy, when will the needles stop?" That's when the reality of her life with diabetes really hit.
We are very excited to contribute to this new joint venture between JDRF and CIHR. Stem cell therapy is one of the most promising areas of research to defeat diabetes. We'd like to congratulate Drs. Nostro and Lin for leading this research effort and to everyone who has contributed to it and will be involved in it.
We're very hopeful that this project will lead to some great results, and with any luck, we can finally answer Ginny's question.
Thanks again, JDRF, CIHR, and for others for making this happen, and good luck.
Thank you so much, Hugh. Thank you, Laurie, and Dave. Thanks so much also for your kind remarks. Before we move on, I just want to remind reporters that you'll be able to ask questions at the end of the speaker's presentation. And you just have to go in the Q&A section and write down your question. Alors, je veux rappeler aux journalistes qui assistent à l'annonce ce matin que vous pouvez poser vos questions dans la langue de votre choix. Vous avez simplement à aller dans la section Q&A, donc questions et réponses, et écrire votre question. Et nous allons transmettre votre question par la suite. So now I want to introduce Dr. Norman Rosenblum. Norman is the Scientific Director for CIHR Institute of Nutrition, Metabolism, and Diabetes, INMD. Norm?
Thank you very much. Good morning and bonjour. Nearly 100 years ago, the discovery of insulin by researchers in Canada changed the lives of millions of people around the world. This discovery is one of the most important in the history of medicine and one of the most dramatic examples of rapid translation of a research discovery into a benefit for patients. Today, we are here to announce funding for new research to mark this important centenary. The CIHR JDRF Accelerating Stem Cell-Based Therapies for Type 1 Diabetes Team Grants are the result of a partnership between CIHR and JDRF Canada that we hope will lead to a day when people living with type 1 diabetes will no longer need to rely on daily insulin injections. I want to express my gratitude to Dave Prouten and JDRF Canada for partnering with CIHR and co-funding this aspirational research It is wonderful to share this vision with you and your donors. Canada has a rich history in health research innovation. The discovery of insulin by Banting and Best was the beginning of a strong tradition of diabetes research in Canada. In 1961, Canadian researchers Till and McCulloch demonstrated the existence of multipotent stem cells, which opened the field of stem cell research in Canada. And in 2000, a research team in Edmonton pioneered the transplantation of pancreatic islets to treat type 1 diabetes. The CIHR JDRF Accelerating Stem Cell-Based Therapies for Type 1 Diabetes Team Grants that we are announcing today will build on this rich legacy in research by bringing together researchers with expertise in these fields to develop a stem cell-based therapy that could potentially be used to treat patients with type 1 diabetes. This new research funding is one component of a suite of activities and research that will be funded by CIHR and our partners, including JDRF Canada, to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the discovery of insulin. This initiative, the 100 Years of Insulin Accelerating Canadian Discoveries to Defeat Diabetes initiative, will support research to develop new preventive and therapeutic paradigms that reverse the upward trajectory of diabetes prevalence and the complications of diabetes, and reduce the impact of diabetes on individuals, families, and communities. I am pleased to be here today as Scientific Director of the CIHR Institute of Nutrition, Metabolism, and Diabetes to announce $6 million in new funding. This funding from our Institute and JDRF Canada will support two highly innovative Canadian research teams that will focus on stem cell therapies for the treatment of type 1 diabetes. It's my pleasure to introduce the lead scientists and the principal investigators of these teams, Dr. Christina Nostro and Dr. Francis Lin. I congratulate both you as the leaders of these teams and all the members of your research teams. So now I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Nostro, who is a senior scientist at the McEwen Stem Cell Institute and an assistant professor in the Department of Physiology at the University of Toronto. I would like to invite you, Dr. Nostro, to share more about the research that you will be leading.
Thank you, Dr. Rosenblum, for the kind introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, people and families living with type 1 diabetes, good morning, bonjour. What a pleasure to be here with you today. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Government of Canada and JDRF for their support and leadership in recognizing the power of stem cell therapy as the future for the treatment of diabetes and creating this funding opportunity. Because of this funding competition, I've had the possibility to dream big and assemble an elite group of scientists that share my vision to develop a cell product to treat patients living with type 1 diabetes without the need of immune suppression. Obviously, this would have not been possible without their support, so it is my pleasure to introduce my co-investigators who are here listening today, Dr. Sara Nunes Vasconcelos, scientist at the Toronto General Hospital Research Institute and assistant professor at the University of Toronto, Dr. Andrew Pepper, assistant professor at the University of Alberta, Dr. Gregory Corbett, professor at the University of Alberta, and Dr. Daniel Drucker, senior scientist at the Lunenfeld-Tannenbaum Research Institute and professor at the University of Toronto. Together, with the support of our collaborators, Dr. Li Zhang, senior scientist at UHN, and Dr. Michael Bram, associate professor at the University of Massachusetts Medical School, we aim to take advantage of our expertise in stem cell biology, vascular biology, islet transplantation, immunology, and beta cell biology to focus on addressing all the current challenges preventing cell therapy from becoming the first line of treatment for patients living with diabetes. The ultimate goal of this proposal is to accelerate the clinical translation of universal donor stem cell-derived islets for type 1 diabetes therapy, so that we can have a single product available to everyone living with type 1 diabetes. We plan to do this by using stem cells designed to avoid rejection after transplantation. These cells will be used to generate an unlimited source of surrogate islets, and by implementing novel approaches to optimize the transplant site, we aim to enhance their survival after transplantation and allow for immediate and long-term grafts functionality. Again, we thank all of you for giving us this opportunity, and we look forward to what the future holds for diabetes treatment. Have a lovely day. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nostro. And now I'd like to introduce Dr. Francis Lin to tell us more about the research that he will be leading. Dr. Lin is a scientist at the Child and Family Research Institute and an associate professor in the Department of Surgery and the School of Biomedical Engineering at the University of British Columbia. Dr. Lin.
Good morning. I'd like to start out by thanking the JDRF and all the JDRF donors for the funding, and I'd also like to thank the Government of Canada and specifically the Institute of Nutrition, Metabolism, and Diabetes within the CIHR. So funding opportunities like this one have built a strong legacy of diabetes research and discovery in Canada, which has resulted in new diabetes therapies that benefit Canadians. And so this, of course, started out with the discovery of insulin by Banting, Best, Culp, and MacLeod almost 100 years ago. But it's continued with the discovery and research of incretins and DPP-4 inhibitors in Vancouver and Toronto, and then later with the Edmonton protocol of islet transplantation. And finally, with the recent participation in the first stem cell clinical trials for those with type 1 diabetes. So as we heard earlier from Sonia, type 1 diabetes results from the loss of the insulin-producing cells that exist within the pancreas. Replacing these insulin-producing cells with cells from organ donors through transplantation is a promising way to reverse and eventually cure the disease. However, the major issue is we do not have enough organ donors to treat everyone with diabetes. So stem cells have two unique properties that make them an ideal source for transplantable insulin-producing cells. The first one is that we can grow these cells in large numbers, large enough to treat everyone in the world with type 1 diabetes. And the second is that we can transform these stem cells into any of the 200 cell types that exist within our bodies. So we have figured out how to transform stem cells into insulin-producing cells. However, the cells that we currently make in the lab don't function as well as the cells that are in healthy humans or healthy people. So as a result, the main goal of our project is to understand why stem cell-derived insulin-producing cells are deficient, and then use that knowledge to make insulin-producing cells that function better both before and after transplantation. And we'll start out by doing this in preclinical models that we hope to get to the clinic in the coming years. So I'm thrilled to lead a diverse team of 17 people who will tackle this problem from multiple angles. This team includes 7 investigators with over 125 years experience in type 1 diabetes research. And starting from east and going west, included our Dr. Jenny Bruin at Carleton University, Dr. Pat McDonald at the University of Alberta and the Alberta Diabetes Institute, Dr. Jim Johnson at the Life Sciences Institute at UBC, and then Drs. Wyatt Wasserman, Bruce Verschere, and Megan Levings, who are all at the BC Children's Hospital Research Institute and at UBC in Vancouver. So the history of science is full of examples of unexpected findings leading to new discoveries. And one of the many benefits of working on this problem in a team, in a diverse multidisciplinary team, is that we can rapidly address any unexpected findings and potentially exploit them. And I think it's particularly fitting that we're celebrating the 100-year anniversary with team grants, as many of the previous Canadian advances in diabetes research and therapeutics were driven by team science. So in closing, I'd like to again thank the CIHR and JDRF for their generous support in helping us turn type 1 into type 9. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lin. And now I'll turn the session back over to David, who will moderate our question and answer session.
Merci, Nora. Merci, Dr. Nostro and Dr. Lin. So yes, here we are with the question period. Reporters that are attending this announcement, please write down your question in the Q&A section. And if you can tell us to who you want to ask your question, this would be very helpful. Alors, s'il y a des journalistes qui donc assistent à l'événement ce matin et qui veulent poser des questions, allez dans la section Q&A et simplement écrire votre question dans la langue de votre choix et peut-être nous indiquer à qui vous posez votre question et ça va nous faire grand plaisir de répondre à votre question. So let me look in the Q&A section. So, okay. Avis Farrell. Good morning, Avis. I'm happy to read you. Hope everything is good with you. So thank you all. I've been tracking this line of research for many years. I assume that clinical trials in people are several years away. That's the question. Who would want to take this one?
I can start if you want, if
Sure.
you're okay, Francis. You're correct, Avis. It's going to be several years. In fact, the cells that we're planning to use will be genetically modified. So we will need to make sure that they're safe before they go into patients. So a lot of testing will need to happen before the clinical trial.
Nor, Dr. Lin, Dave?
I can add to that. So stem cells are unique in that they have the ability to transform from a cell that's found very early in embryonic development all the way to a mature cell. And currently there are stem cell derived products in clinical trial in people with type 1 diabetes, but they're not mature, fully functional beta cells. They're a precursor cell type. And so those trials are actually happening in both Vancouver and Edmonton as we speak. So stay tuned for the results of those trials, but the early results are coming out now and they look fairly promising, although we do have a ways to go.
Merci, Dr. Lin. Another question. So is there an overlap between the two projects? If so, is there or will there be a mechanism to facilitate exchange of information and data between the two projects? Who would like to answer this one?
Shall I start, Francis, or and then you can?
Sure.
I think at this point we don't know exactly what the overlap is. Of course, we're obviously trying to reach the same goal. And in the spirit of JDRF, teams that were funded by JDRF were always interacting with each other through consortia. And I expect, we will continue this in the future. So, I think we will be exchanging information.
Yeah, perhaps I can add that one of the principles of the collaboration between JDRF and CIHR INMD is to, in fact, interact with our teams as funding goes forward, to monitor progress, to attempt to facilitate troubleshooting, which inevitably occurs, and also to provide knowledge exchange between these two teams and perhaps other investigators in our larger orbit of people working in this arena of science in order to facilitate the goals that have been set down by these investigators. So these are very important processes that we as a convener, as a funding agency, as JDRF as a funding charity, believe very strongly in and will be working on in an ongoing fashion.
Thank you, Norm. Dr. Lin?
I could add there are a lot of ways to get to a goal, and as we're seeing with the COVID vaccines. So I think it's just a good idea to do things independently as well as collaborate and find out things that haven't worked from each other. But Christina and I both have the same goal. We're approaching it differently, I'm pretty sure about that.
Thank you all. I have another question here. So Dr. Nostro, will your beta cells be encapsulated and transplanted just under the skin?
So in theory, we are trying to go with naked islets. So the idea is that the cells will be kind of invisible to the immune system, so we wouldn't require any encapsulation. Of course, this is something that we are hoping and the goal of this project, but you know, we never know how things turn out. So through the experimental, you know, through the experiments that we develop, we will design, you know, update the project as it moves forward. And if we need encapsulation, of course, this is something we would consider. We're not going to close doors to that, but ideally we'd like to go without.
Interesting. I'd like to remind the reporters, if you have any question, please write down the questions in the Q&A section. I have another question to, well, all of you. So can you please explain what stem cell research is to those who may not know anything about it? Is this method used elsewhere in healthcare?
Yeah, well, perhaps I can just say a word about it, and then I'm sure Drs. Nostro and Lin, who live this every day, will have comments. I think in particular, Dr. Lin introduced us to this idea. These are cells that have the potential in their, by very definition, to be any kind of cell. They start as what we call a stem cell or a early progenitor cell, which can then proceed to be restricted in the kind of cell it becomes to the myriad of types of cells that we have in the mammalian body. This vision of using stem cells, the technologies that are used are actually being harnessed in other fields of medicine in a very robust fashion. And probably the one that people may be most familiar with is with respect to the blood system and in cancer, the treatment of cancer, but even not in the treatment of cancer. But we have cells in our bone marrow, for example, which is within our bones that give rise to the cells that constitute our blood system. They have their stem cells, just like other organs do. And these cells have been the subject of a lot of innovation and treatment for bloodborne diseases and cancer for a number of years now. And we are also seeing stem cells being utilized, at least experimentally, for the treatment of spinal cord disorders, as an example. So we're talking about the nervous system. And at an experimental level, in solid organs like kidney, liver, others, people are working hard on the identification of stem cells to try to repopulate organs that are injured. So actually, the concept and the technology is widespread, and we're in a period of rapid development in the history of biology and medicine at the present time.
Dr. Nostro?
I think Dr. Rosenblum covered it enough. You know, what I can add is that maybe, you know, there are other clinical trials using embryonic stem cells or pluripotent stem cells, not just for type 1 diabetes. There is a successful trial happening definitely in the UK and Japan. I'm not sure if they're probably in the US as well, for macular degeneration treatment, so replacement of the retinal epithelium cells. And the initial data is, you know, very encouraging. So there is a lot of power behind this technology. So I think, you know, we're on the right path.
Great.
Can I add something?
Sure.
I think find improved way to prevent and treat diabetes, including improved delivery to healthcare people who are living with diabetes. When Dr. Francis said the results are very promising, and Dr. Nostro, I'm very hopeful. And you know, maybe this is a big gift to the 100th of birth of insulin discovery. If you are going on the right path, I think it's a good news for all living people, the population with the type 1 diabetes. When results are promising and way to prevent and treat diabetes, and I'm very hopeful you are going on right path, and this is the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Another question. So if trials are successful, what do you envision as the year that the first person with type 1 diabetes will be able to receive this life-changing treatment? Who would like to answer?
I can have a shot at that one. I'll just say that I don't like to predict when things will happen. If we think back to Banting, Best, McLeod, and Collip, they set out to find insulin and they'd done it within a year. So you never know when it will happen. We're making progress very quickly on this. We're already using stem cells to help people with diabetes. We hope that will continue. But Christina and my projects hope to use more mature insulin producing cells as a treatment. And so that will take a little longer.
Merci, Dr. Lin. Anybody else on this? We're good? Okay, another question. What about using a patient's own cells to make beta cells for their own body?
Shall I start?
Sure.
Hi, Bonnie. Nice to see you here. So unfortunately, for a patient with type 1 diabetes, because it is an autoimmune disease, even if we were to make cells from themselves, we would still have the issue of recurring autoimmunity. So the beta cells that are made from the same patient, from the stem cells coming from the same patient, which are called induced pluripotent stem cells, would create a beta cells that would express the antigens that would be recognized by the immune system and destroyed anyway. So there is, in this particular case, I don't think there is an advantage in using the patient's own cells. Obviously, for, potentially for a type 2 diabetes, this could be a great solution. We are still, the development to create personalized stem cells derived islets is still going to be very costly, of course, but maybe in the future when, costs will go down and we'll be able to do that. But for type 1, I think it's going to be tricky.
Dr. Lin, something to add on this? No? Norm, all good? Okay. Would the investigators' comments on the self-renewal potential of modified stem cells and its impact on the longevity of the transplanted cells?
I could start out with that one. So insulin producing cells in healthy people don't renew, essentially. So after about the age of 20, you don't make more insulin producing cells. So we don't expect that a transplant would significantly renew itself. That said, if we had an unlimited source of these cells that we could transplant to help people, that wouldn't be such an issue because we could just transplant again. So I don't think renewal is a huge barrier currently.
Okay, Dr. Nostro, something to add?
And I guess, so far, when it comes to the stem cell self-renewal of the original population before we committed to a mature cell type, whether it's a beta cells or a cardiac cells, I think so far the data say that, these cells are not affected by this, so they should be able to behave exactly the same way as an unmodified stem cell.
Okay. Let me see if I have other questions. I think we've pretty much answered all the questions in the Q&A section. Also, there were some questions in the chat. They have also been covered. Well, this was a fabulous announcement. This went very well. I'm so happy that you guys were able to make it on this Saturday morning. I want to thank Madame Saidu for your presence this morning. I want to thank Dr. Nostro, Dr. Lin, Norm, and Dave. Always a pleasure, Dave, to see you also with JDRF. I want to remind also if there's other reporters that are online and did not get a chance to ask a question, or just please contact me to my normal email address, so mediarelations@cihr.jc.ca. You know I will respond. Alors, s'il y a des journalistes qui avaient des questions supplémentaires à poser, simplement m'envoyer votre question à mon adresse que vous connaissez bien, mediarelations@cihr.gc.ca. Ça va me faire plaisir de répondre à tout ça. So, with that being said, thank you so much, everyone, for your presence. We had over 60 participants to this announcement this morning. This is a clear success, and best of luck to all of you. Merci beaucoup.
Merci.
Have a nice Saturday.